Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, independent journalist Philip Bump, and MSNBC contributor, former U.S. attorney and former senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. And Chuck, we'll start with you. How unconventional is it to have the assistant AG, yes, the second in command at the DOJ, meet with a potential witness? And let's not forget that this is Trump's former personal attorney in all of this. So is there a conflict of interest?
So, Ariel, the Justice Department's been around for a long time, and I was in it for some number of years, and I've never heard of the Deputy Attorney General, essentially the chief operating officer of the Department of Justice, doing something like this. I'm not saying it's necessarily or in all cases improper, but it does strike me as odd because normally if you wanted to talk to a witness in a criminal case, somebody who might down the road cooperate in some way, you would ask the line prosecutors and the line FBI agents, the men and women who work the underlying case, to do it. They're the ones who know most about it. You know, is there a conflict of interest? Well, it's an interesting question, and probably don't have enough time for my full answer, but I'll say only this. I'm also concerned about perceptions of a conflict, not just an actual conflict. And so while there may not be an actual conflict, anything that can be perceived as one, it's a good idea for prosecutors and agents to stay away from that perception and to bring into a case or into an investigation people who have no actual conflict and no perception of a conflict. Perceptions matter, Ariel.
Yeah, and you referenced there that the attorney for some of these survivors said that he wanted to be in the room for these meetings with Ghislaine Maxwell. Should a prosecutor have been present in order to represent some of those survivors?
Well, the survivors, the victims, are represented by counsel. That doesn't mean that that lawyer, he or she, has a right to be in the room while law enforcement is doing its work. Victims properly have lots of rights, including statutory rights under federal law. And I understand why the attorney might want to be there. But let's just step back from this case for a minute, Ariel, and ask a broader question. Would victims normally be present for routine law enforcement interviews? No, not normally. Are there exceptions to that? Perhaps. This case is anything but normal, and so trying to draw lessons from it, I think, can be hazardous.
Lisa, explain this concept of limited immunity. We know that this means that as long as she's telling the truth, nothing that Ghislaine Maxwell says in these meetings can be held against her in the future. But we know that the DOJ itself has said that she has a tendency to lie, and the judge that sentenced her also said the same thing. So what does she get out of this?
Well, I think, first of all, her criminal case is still pending technically. She has asked the Supreme Court to review her conviction, which withstood not only a trial, but an appeal to the Second Circuit. That having been said, the reason that you grant limited use immunity to somebody who is a witness or a potential cooperator is because you want them, in exchange for that immunity, to tell you everything that they themselves did. That's the whole reason for the immunity. And so it's sort of a push-pull. The more somebody inculpates themselves, the more assurance you have that they are telling the truth. Ghislaine Maxwell, on the other hand, is a person who for years has insisted she has done nothing wrong. She was not aware of some of the acts that Jeffrey Epstein is alleged to have participated in. And indeed, she says that she herself did not participate in sex acts with the victims, which I want to emphasize to you is part of what she was convicted for. It wasn't just that she groomed victims or helped Jeffrey Epstein molest and sexually assault people. It was that she herself participated in some of those assaults and was accused by victims on the stand of having done so.
So to the point of Ghislaine Maxwell having to answer these questions, what could she potentially get out of it? Her attorney says that she answered all of these questions truthfully, that she never pleaded the fifth or took her right to keep it all to herself. So, and we also know that there were hundreds of people that she allegedly was asked about. So what does that say to you, Phil?
I think it's important to step back and consider that we exist. All of this discussion is happening in a circumstance which is unusual, which is that we can't trust any of the parties involved. We can't trust Maxwell, certainly, and the DOJ in the past has not trusted her. But we also can't trust the government side. Right? We know how Donald Trump approaches this. We know the Attorney General has a stake in this. We know as well that Todd Blanche has a stake in this. There are all these parties to the point of conflict of interest. We're so far past that, right? There are all these parties who have an interest in not necessarily being forthright. So what does that tell us? We don't know because we don't know what was asked, right? We don't know that we can rely on Todd Blanche to ask the sorts of questions we would expect a Department of Justice official to ask. And therefore, we don't know what the validity of her responses was. We don't know if he said, name a bunch of people who could have been involved in Jeffrey Epstein who don't have a last name that rhymes with Bump, right? Like, he could have said anything along those lines, and she could have answered very truthfully because she knew what he was getting at. And that we exist in this space makes all of these questions shaded with cloudiness.
What do you think the likelihood is that we do see the transcripts from this conversation?
Unedited? I mean, I think it's unlikely that, look, I don't want to disparage Todd Blanche. I've met Todd Blanche. Maybe he asked very straightforward questions. I suspect that he asked questions that were very leading because everyone understands what his desired outcome here was. And so the odds that we see unedited transcripts, I think, are probably pretty low.
Lisa, I want to play what one former attorney representing some of the Epstein victims and survivors had to say about a potential pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell.
If this leads to some exposure of those who enabled Jeffrey Epstein to be able to have this reign of terror on these women for so long, I'm in favor of that, but not in exchange for a pardon, not in exchange for any actual leniency towards Ghislaine Maxwell's sentence. I believe she, and I think I speak on behalf of most victims, believe that she should serve absolutely the fullest extent of her sentence.
Is there any possible scenario in your mind where this didn't come up with the DOJ, that in order for her to give information, there must be some kind of deal out there in the ether?
I think that there is a lot that's probably unsaid right now, and in that it reminds me of the Eric Adams situation, where there is not an overt quid pro quo, but everybody understands that they are taking steps toward what could eventually be a deal, both through their public statements and the press as it's unfolding. I think you can sense that that is what's happening. So did they offer her limited use immunity? Yes, we know that to be true from public reporting. Was there an express, we're offering this to you because we expect that you are going to turn over names to us? Of course not. Was there an express, we're offering this to you because we expect you to exculpate President Trump? Absolutely not. But I think everyone involved here understands what they are driving at.
Nothing for nothing, essentially. The president does have the power of the pardon. If He says he's not even weighing this yet. It's too early to even talk about this. But should the president even consider it? What would be the timeline? How does that look?
Should the president consider it? The timeline is one of his own making. I mean, again, I want to go back to something that Phil just said about nothing about this is typical, and I think Chuck underscored that as well. Usually, you have a recommendation from the Office of the Pardon Attorney at the Department of Justice. That is something that has been put into place to normalize and regularize the pardon process. But this is an administration that in its last iteration repeatedly ignored and excluded the pardon attorney and has done so in this iteration as well. They have even fired the woman who was the pardon attorney because she wouldn't consider a pardon for Mel Gibson. So I don't know that there's any timeline to expect other than one that's of a political making. When is it convenient for Donald Trump to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell is really the only consideration here, Ariel, that probably matters.
And Chuck, I just want to give the last one to you. You have said that you don't think it's a good idea for these files to be released. Can you elaborate on why you think it's so dangerous?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Ariel. Thank you. So let me rain on everyone's parade. In an investigative file, you find lots of information, vetted and unvetted, verified and unverified, reliable and unreliable. If I were to tell an FBI agent that you, Ariel, had a relationship with Epstein and Maxwell, I could be completely wrong, and she would still be obligated to write that down, and therefore your name is in the Epstein file. So my view has always been, and this is the traditional view, if the Department of Justice wants to say something, they should do it in court. And if they can't do it in court, they can't bring charges, they don't have the quantum of evidence necessary to obtain and sustain a conviction, they ought to keep their mouth shut and walk away. And a quick analogy, if I may, Ariel, imagine you're working on a big, complex investigative story for MSNBC, and you talk to lots of people and you make lots of notes. Only a small portion of that would make it into your published work, if you published at all. You'd have a large file of stuff that you gathered that wouldn't go anywhere and would never see the light of day, and that's completely appropriate because you wouldn't be able to verify it. And so that same principle applies here. I understand a lot of people want to see this stuff, but I think it's a mistake to dump an investigative file into the public domain.